Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron. If you are into two-channel audio, consider yourself an audiophile or a music enthusiast, welcome home. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when the next video drops. So on one hand, we have a DAC here that measures really well, keeps the price below $600, and best of all, sounds pretty dang good. On the other hand, I feel conflicted to get overly excited about this DAC and a few others that I've heard that seem oddly familiar and might use the same formula as the LOXJIE D50. Yeah, I'm looking at you, SMSL. So, let's chat about it. Taking a look from the front, the D50 offers a front panel LCD screen and a dial to the right with a center push button for navigating the menu. The D50 also includes a pretty cheap feeling plastic remote, which allows you to scroll through the menu as well. Speaking of menus, I won't be going in depth, but will highlight some key features. The D50 does have the ability to select variable or fixed output, which gives the flexibility of using it as your digital front end or preamp as long as you don't need other analog inputs. You also have some PCM and DSD filter options to choose from, which all offer some differences, with PCM Sharp being my personal favorite. For the record, I don't dabble in DSD recording, so the DSD filters were not something that I bothered with. Taking a look at the back of the D50, there is your choice of balanced or single-ended outputs, which allows some flexible routing options to your preamp or power amplifier. As far as digital inputs, you have your choice of optical, I2S, coaxial, and USB inputs. Just above the USB jack, there is an antenna, which opens the door to wireless streaming for those who want to keep things as simple as possible and stream from their phone or tablet and treat music like McDonald's.
I'm talking quarter pound of beef on the hot, hot side.
And the hot stays hot.
The new big DLT.
You can do that. Last, the D50 offers a standard IEC jack for power and toggle switch for turning the unit on and off. So, from a feature set and build quality perspective, the D50 looks and feels pretty impressive. With a sale price under $600, I think the value proposition is fair for this DAC, so the last thing that we need to tackle
I'm not going to get in trouble. It worked in practice. How did he get
is how the D50 actually sounds. Before we tackle listening impressions, it is critical to understand that what I'm listening for in a DAC might sound a little or a lot different from other reviews and reviewers that are trying to tackle things like tone.
Build a tent and say the well is dry, chocolate rain.
Also, I do all of my digital comparisons using my reference DAC, which is much more expensive and also an R2R DAC.
He's a dandy. He's a real fancy boy.
Which is a completely different topology as to what we have here in the LOXJIE. Even still, if you asked me how the D50's top end, mid-range, and bass sounds, I'd probably tell you that it sounds pretty much the same as my May DAC, which might come as a surprise to many of you. Either way, I am a firm believer, based on listening, and more listening, that a DAC's sonic differences aren't going to be found in tone, but will be expressed in the subtleties. Being specific, what I'm trying to lock onto is soundstage, harmonic structure, and the decay of all instruments that we at NRD call the time domain. So, getting that out of the way, when it comes to the overall presentation of the D50, this DAC offers up a boatload of resolution without sounding too forward or fatiguing. And again, just to be clear, I'm not talking about tone. I'm talking about decay and staging presentation. With the D50, cymbal hits, female vocals, and electric guitars rarely sound harsh or grainy, but do offer all the details that one can ask for. Going back and forth between this DAC and the May DAC provided more air and extension and sounded more refined, but I'm happy to report that the D50 dished out the details while remaining smooth, which is what audiophiles are looking for when it comes to digital playback. Now, before my words get twisted, I'm not talking about detail in the sense of missing information. What I'm saying is the detail that is there sounds natural and quite refined, or in other words, it sounds analog. In terms of soundstage width, the D50 is focused, but sounds a little narrow when compared to the Maydac. It's a subtle difference, but it's there. 30 seconds in on the song Rise from Dominique Fils-Aimé's album Nameless, there is a hi-hat just off to the right, bouncing back and forth between the D50 and the Maydac. The decay of the cymbal hit lasted longer and is indeed wider with the Maydac. It's hard to say if the D50 might be truncating the size of the stage or the decay, but it wasn't as wide with this track and a couple others that I tested. Now with the D50, depth or soundstage depth, on the other hand, sounded just as deep as any other DAC that I've spent time with, and it also sounded very focused, meaning at no point was it hard to lock onto specific instruments in the mix. Honestly, I think that the D50 is going to surprise many of the folks in this category, and I gotta say it surprised me as well. Harmonic structure and decay on the D50 might be its only clear weakness, and what I wish it offered more of was a sense of air and extension in the time domain. Critically listening to the appeal from the Toadies album Heretics, I waited for the decay of the tambourine to light up the entire front end of the stage, like my Maydac does, and unfortunately, the D50 just can't compete in this arena. Granted, and again, we are talking about a David and Goliath situation here in terms of price, but that is the purpose of a reference piece like my Maydac. It's to make these comparisons. In closing, the LOXJIE D50 seems to be a pretty safe purchase at its price point, but don't expect it to be a giant killer because it's not. Taking a look at third-party measurements, there is nothing from an objective standpoint to prevent me from recommending the D50. So, for the crowd who only cares about that, go for it. Nothing wrong with it. However, what's causing me to simmer down the hype when considering the subjective crowd, it's this. This DAC, after many hours of listening, doesn't do anything that stands out to me as a must-have. Sure, it's smooth and it's refined, but so is a long list of DACs out there around the same price. Whether it's SMSL, LOXJIE, or so many others, they are all competing in the Chinese DAC wars, and it's clear they have a winning formula down. Step 1, look great on paper for the audio science guys, and step 2, sound decent enough to get by. Maybe that is harsh, but I really don't care. I'm not here to pimp Amazon affiliates. For me, the challenge is, and yes, it's the challenge I present to all the folks who swear these types of DACs are just as good as anything else out there, regardless of the price. What are you listening for? Seriously, I'm not playing games here. I genuinely want to know, what are you listening for? Because then maybe we have an understanding. So let me know in the comment section down below. And as far as I'm concerned, my thoughts, what I think, as for the things that I'm listening for mentioned in this review, the LOXJIE D50 is a good sounding DAC with a lot of competition. Nothing more and nothing less. If that sounds good enough for you, go for it. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.